Hello, students. Now, in this lecture, I'm going to deal with the poem Breath by Birago Diop. I've already given you some details about this poem, about this poet, and now we are going to deal the poem, the text of the poem. Okay, so let's go stanza wise. Now, listen more to things than to words that are said. The water's voice sings, and the flame cries, and the wind that brings the woods to sighs is the breathing of the dead. Now, this is the very first stanza of this poem, and it tells us to pay more attention to the world around us. That is why the first two lines listen more to things than to words that are said. Right. So, the poet is asking us to pay more attention to the world that is around us, to the sounds and feelings in nature, rather than just to the spoken words. Okay. Now, the very first two lines means that there is, in a way, the poet is trying to convey that there is a deeper truth in nature, in the things that we hear and feel, that we might miss if we only focus on what people are saying. Okay, so nature has its own language that speaks through its movements and sounds. Right. So the stanza here describes, then it went on to describe different elements of nature. For example, the water's voice sings and the flame cries, right? And the wind that brings the woods to sighs is the breathing of the dead. So he is telling about the different elements of nature that seem to express emotions and life. For example, the water sings. This gives us a peaceful and lively image of flowing rivers or streams, right? Then the flame cries shows that shows a sense of pain, or maybe some sense of longing that maybe the fire is calling out. Then the line, and the wind that brings the woods to sigh. Now again, the wind makes the woods sigh. Again, makes you feel that like the trees are breathing or even mourning. Right. So these natural sounds and movements are not just random. The poet says that they are the breathing of the dead. Okay. So even though this idea, it may you may find that this idea is very strange, right? But then it reflects a strong African belief. And what is that belief? That those who have died are still with us. How? By living in nature, by living in water, wind, and fire, by living in the elements of nature, right? So their spirits are not silent. They are present in the world and communicate with us through the natural elements. So when we hear a river flowing or the wind rustling the trees, we are actually hearing the presence of our ancestors, right? So this stanza is asking us to look at nature in a very new way, right? And we just don't have to just look the environment the way it is. Rather, we have to see it as something spiritual, full of memory, full of connection to those who came before us, that is our ancestors, right? Now let's come to the second stanza. Those who are dead have never gone away. They are in the shadows, darkening around. They are in the shadows, fading into day. The dead are not under the ground. They are in the trees that quiver. They are in the woods that weep. They are in the waters of the rivers. They are in the waters that sleep. They are in the crowds. They are in the homestead. The dead are never dead. Now, in this stanza, again, the poet repeats the same idea and says, he is saying again the same thing, that dead people have not truly left us, right? He's expanding on this whole idea, and he's saying, and he starts with saying this thing, that those who are dead have never gone away, right? That means that death is not an end. People who have died are still present amongst us. They are still around us, just in a different form. Right? So the poet is continuing to say the same thing, that dead are in the shadows, both darkening at night and the fading in the light of the day. You can find the dead. Right? So these images show, so these images show you that the dead are always with us, whether it is day or night, visible or invisible. Right. So he clearly states that the dead are not under the ground. Now this means that he is, in a way, he's challenging the common idea that once people are buried, they're gone forever. Right. What does he say instead? He says that the dead exist in nature. They are in the trees that quiver. Right. So this means that they live in the shaking of the leaves. They are in the woods that weep, which means that they could be the sound of trees swaying in the wind, like they are crying. Right. So the dead are also in the rivers that flow and in the waters that sleep, which means that both moving and still water holds their presence. Right. So, and once he is done with this thing, he brings the idea even closer to everyday life by saying that the dead are in the crowds and in the homestead. Homestead मतलब जो आपका घर हुआ, family space जहाँ पे family रहती है आपकी homestead, right? So this again shows us that our ancestors and loved ones are not far away. They are in fact a part of our daily lives. They are part of our public places, and they are also the part of our home. They are still at home, right? So it tells you a very important idea, and he is repeating that same idea again and again, that the dead are never dead. Even though we may not get to see them, but their spirit and energy continues to live around us. Okay. Then listen more to things than to words that are said. The water's voice sings. So again, there is a repetition of the first stanza, but then there is some expansion that has been done. So let's go with this for this stanza. Listen more to things than to words that are said. The water's voice sings, and the flame cries, and the wind that brings the woods to sighs is the breathing of the dead who have not gone away, who are not under the ground, who are never dead. Now, this stanza again begins with the same lines, that listen more to things than to words that are said. Now this repetition is very important. Why? Because it is reminding us again and again to pay attention to the natural world where the spirits of the dead are present. So instead of focusing only on the spoken words, the poet, that is our Birago Diop, he wants us to listen with our hearts and senses to the sounds that are present in nature. Okay, and once more we hear about the water that is singing, and the flame that is crying, the wind that is making the wood sigh, right? So all these images are in a way creating a very a feeling of deep connection between nature and something more spiritual, right? So, just like the first stanza, these natural sounds are being described as the breathing of the dead. Now, this again shows you that the natural world is full of life and memory, and that the spirits of those who have passed away are not silent. Rather, they breathe through nature. Right. So, the poet is reminding us again that the dead have not gone away. They are in fact under the ground. See the line, the last three or four lines, they are under the ground, and therefore they are not under the ground, they are never dead. Okay, so these last three lines expresses the central belief of the poem, that death is not the end. What? Instead of being buried and forgotten, the dead continue to exist amongst us, around us, in invisible but in powerful ways. They live in the wind, they live in the water, in fire, in trees, right? So they are present in all living and moving things, right? So he is he's repeating this stanza once again. Why? Because he wants to strengthen the idea that we are never truly alone. Our past, our loved ones, and our history, all is going to live on around with us. Okay, then come to the fourth stanza. Fourth, no? Yes. Now, those who are dead have never gone away, they are at the breast of the wife. They are in the child's cry of dismay, and the firebrand bursting into life. The dead are not under the ground, they are in the fire that burns slow. They are in the grass with tears to shed, in the rock where whining winds blow. They are in the forest, they are in the homestead, the dead are never dead. Now, again, the very first line, those who are dead have never gone away. That people, it again reminds us that people who have died still exist in the world. Diop wants us to understand that death does not separate the living from the dead. Instead, their presence continues to be felt deeply in everyday life. Right. So he is trying to give a very personal and emotional examples where it is written that where we can feel the presence of the dead. Right. So he says that at the breast of the wife, or so this particular phrase, it could mean that the love and comfort shared in relationships carry the spirit of those who are no longer alive. Right. Then the next line, the child's cry of despair. Then again, it shows that in the pain, sorrow, or fear of the child, you can feel the spirit of the dead still being present, right? Perhaps watching over or responding to the living, right? Then the firebrand bursting into life. The firebrand is a piece of burning wood. Okay, so when it suddenly flares up, the wood, when it suddenly flares up, it shows life and energy, right? अब तक लकड़ी क्या था, लकड़ी सिर्फ एक लकड़ी नॉर्मल वे में एग्जिस्ट करता था, ऐसा लग रहा था कि वो नॉन लिविंग थिंग है, बट द मोमेंट यू लिट अ फायर ऑन दैट पर्टिकुलर वुड, कैसे एकदम पूरी तरीके से ऐसा लगता है कि एकदम जलता हुआ आग एकदम जल रही है, कभी जल रही है, थोड़ा कम हो रही है, फिर जल रही है, दैट मीन्स इट इज़ अ मूविंग थिंग, राइट? ऐसा लग रहा है भर गया लाइफ और एनर्जी से, राइट? सो दैट इज़ वाई ही इज सेइंग दैट द मोमेंट वी लिट अप दिस वुड, इट shows life and energy. So this could mean that the dead are in the unexpected sparks of energy, passion, or inspiration that we experience. They are not lifeless but full of spirit. And he reiterates the same idea that the dead are never dead, right? They are not under the ground. Last के lines में देखिए, right? So he again, in a way, he is rejecting the idea that death buries people forever. Sorry. So he continues to show the many places where the spirits live still. Right. They are in the fire that burns low, suggesting that they are in quiet strength. Right. They are in the grass with tears to shed. Again, it means that even the smallest parts of nature, even in those smallest parts of nature, you can feel and express the idea that they are still alive. Right. Then they are also in the rock where whining winds blow. Again, it shows that even strong, still things like rocks are touched by the spirit of the dead through the winds that pass over them, right? And in the last two lines, he says that they are in the forest. So he says that the dead are in the forest and then they are in the homestead, just like before he has said that, right? So he continues with the same theme that they are not far away, they are both in nature and they can be found in home as well. And this is how he ends the stanza with the last line that the dead are never dead. That means that he is conveying the same idea that they are still with us. Our ancestors are always with us in everything around us. Okay, so this is in a way, you can say that this is the heart of the message, heart of this message, heart of this poem, right? Then come to the next stanza, a big one, and repeats each day the covenant where it is said that our fate is bound to the law and the fate of the dead who are not dead, to the spirits of breath who are stronger than they, we are bound to life by this harsh law, and by this covenant we are bound to the deeds of the bare breathings that die along the bed and the banks of the river, to the deeds of the breaths that quiver, in the rock that winds and the grasses that cry, to the deeds of the breathings that lie, in the shadow that lightens and grows deep, in the tree that shudders, in the woods that weep, in the waters that flow and the waters that sleep, to the spirits of breath which are stronger than they that have taken the breath of the deathless dead, of the dead who have never gone away, of the dead who are not now under the ground, who are never dead. right? So I've already told you how he's saying that each and every element of nature you can find the ancestors, the presence of our ancestors, right? So it is I've already told you all these things, right? uh, where were we? Mm-hmm. One second. Okay. So what do you mean by covenant? Covenant क्या होता है? Any idea about the word covenant? Covenant means, sorry, covenant is a sort of an agreement between uh, two or more parties to perform or not to perform some action, right? So he says the covenant where it is said that our fate is bound to law. So in a way he is saying that the humans, it is the African philosophical law that is binding humans to the spirits of the dead and to the nature as well, right? So in this particular stanza he is saying the same thing, right? Then comes the last stanza again. It is a reiteration of the very first stanza. And why is he doing so? Why is he repeating the same idea once again? Because to emphasize upon this idea that our ancestors are not dead, they are still present in the nature, and it would take a keen listening to the things than to the words that are being said in order to feel their presence. Okay. So he is, in a way he's saying that there is a sacred promise or agreement, because that is what we mean by covenant, the word covenant, right? You are the word at the covenant, that is what we mean. So the poet is saying that every day nature reminds us of the powerful truth. And what is that truth? That we the living are connected to the dead and to the rules of uh, life, right? So the law here could be understood as uh, the cycle of life, death, and rebirth, or the spiritual law that connects all beings. Okay, and he continues to say the same thing, that our fate is tied not only to this law but also to the fate of the dead who are not dead, and to the spirits of breath. Right. So these are the forces of life and nature that are even stronger than the dead themselves. Right. So this part of this stanza gives us the idea that there is something powerful and eternal that connects all of us, right? The living and the dead. The breath or spirit travels through nature and it carries memories, life, and presence, right? So that is why he is using very strong images to show you how this breath, how this spirit is living in the world around us. He says that it is in the river banks, it is in the beds of rivers, that means the flow of life, right? So both these things depict you the flow of life. Then he says that it is in the rock that winds. So in a way he's saying it is the sound of the wind or life in stillness. Then he says that you can find that in the grasses that cry. So again he says that life in even the smallest parts of nature you can feel life, right? So and then he also says this thing, that it is in the shadows that lighten and deepen, and in the tree that shudders. That means the changing moods of the world also gives you an idea that our ancestors are still living with us, right? He also says that it is in the waters that move and the ones that are still. So wherever you see the dead people who have left us, the ancestors are with us, right? It shows that the breath of the dead is everywhere, in all moments of silence, movement, growth, change, everywhere, right? So that is why he says that the spirits of breath are stronger than death itself. They have taken in breath or spirit of the deathless dead, right? It is a very powerful phrase, I would say. Why? Because it means that the dead do not truly die. Deathless dead, what do you mean by deathless dead? मर चुके हैं लेकिन फिर भी हैं, right? So they do not truly die, they are not dead entirely, they are deathless dead, right? Because their presence, the presence of our ancestors, still can be felt today. They are going to live on forever. And it ends with the lines, of the dead who have never gone away, of the dead who are now, not now, under the ground, who are never dead. Why is he saying these lines? Why he's saying this line? He is saying this line because he is, in a way, you can say that he is trying to complete the poem's message, which is that death is not the end. That is not an end. Rather, the dead people live on through spirit, memory, and nature. Okay. So that's all in this poem. फिर से वापस उसी का एक बार repetition है. So the entire poem teaches us that we can feel the presence of our ancestors in the world around us, right? Sorry. And that is why he is repeating the idea that the dead are never dead, which means yes, they might have dead, they might have died a long time back, but still they are with us. Okay? Even though they are not in physical form, but then you can find, you can feel the presence of their being in the elements of nature, right? They exist in the spiritual form, in the spirit form. Okay, so they live in the wind, the water, the trees, the fire, and even in human emotions and relationships. Okay, so in a way, our poet is trying to tell you the connection that life, death, and nature shares, right? It shows us that we all are part of a larger cycle. And that is why he asks us again and again to listen to nature and not just to words. Why? Because it is nature which is carrying the true voice of the dead, right? So, and he also talks about the spiritual law or the covenant that binds the living and the dead, right? So it reminds us of the deep connection that we have to our with our roots, our ancestors, and with our traditions, right? So this poem, we can say that it is more like a celebration of ancestral memory, a celebration of African spirituality, right? And of course of the ongoing presence of the past in our daily lives, right? And he asks us in a way to respect and honor those who came before us, that is our ancestors, right? Why? Because they continue to live in everything that surrounds us. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.